Hey guys, Walls here. This is a video introduction to the story An Astrologer's Day by R.K. Narayan. Now, An Astrologer's Day is one of my favorite short stories. Actually, like this little short story unit with An Astrologer's Day, Civil Peace, and Contents of the Dead Man's Pocket. Three of my favorite short stories of all time. I like this story for different reasons than I like Civil Peace. It's a pretty cool story though. Now, it was written by R.K. Narayan, and read this stuff right here to give you a clearer picture of who the author was. And remember, who the author is and what the author has experienced influences the story. And we better understand the stories we read if we kind of get where the author's coming from. So read about the author, but it'll tell you this. R.K. Narayan was kind of he was considered the voice of India. So he, if I traveled to India and I said, hey, let me read an Indian author, something that it would be culturally relevant to you guys, they would hand me a book by R.K. Narayan. We talked about in class how, who do we think of as American authors? Someone mentioned James Patterson. That guy writes a lot of books. Stephen King. And somebody mentioned, if you think of a British author, if you just go, hey, if you go to England and say, hey, who's a famous author here? You've got J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series. So R.K. Narayan was that level for Indian authors and Indian culture. Now, kind of like Stephen King, he created a fictional town. We talked about in class, Stephen King created the fictional town Derry, Maine. And Derry, Maine is central to the Stephen King universe, so to speak. So a lot of Stephen King's work centers around or takes place in Derry, Maine. So R.K. Narayan created a town called Malgudi. And a lot of his stories take place in Malgudi. And he has an entire kind of world in his head, that exists in this town. And that's kind of how he's able to drill down and get to who people really are and how people would actually behave, because he has everything centered in this one place. So we'll talk a little bit about that in an analysis video about how all of these authors, you've got Chinwe Achebe for Civil Peace, R.K. Narayan for An Astrologer's Day, and Jack Finney for Contents of the Dead Man's Pocket. All three of those authors are really good at creating a sense of place. And as you read this story, when you get to the exposition, when we meet the astrologer, I want you to pay attention to what the astrologer looks like. On the first page of the story, you get really clear descriptions of the astrologer and the place he's in, the setting of the story. So it's set in a marketplace. In class, we talked about how it would be like the Crump flea market, but if the flea market would took up Crump, the main area there. It's a huge open air market. And the author here, Narayan, does a really good job of describing the place and making you feel like you can see it, you can hear it, you can smell it, and taste the stuff that's going on, the cooking and stuff. So this story is mainly focused on dialogue. Not a lot actually happens. Like in Civil Peace, we get a lot of information through flashback. We do get some key information through flashback here. We learn some details through the narrator about the astrologer that make what's going on in the present very, it gives it, the flashback is very important, is what I'm saying in this story. So pay attention to some of the details that the author gives us in the beginning, because when you get to the resolution, this flashback is going to make a lot of sense. All right, foreshadowing. This story is all about mysteriousness and mystery, and when we talk about astrology, we talk about mysticism and this belief in a different realm that not everyone can see or understand. And the astrologer is kind of like a gateway or an interpreter of our future. It's very mysterious stuff. So there's a lot of foreshadowing because we don't know what's going to happen next. Now, like I said, there's not a lot of stuff that happens in this story. It's a very dialogue-heavy story. So the climax is going to come in the form of dialogue. There's a specific interaction between the astrologer and the antagonist that you should pick up on it. There's a specific interaction where you go whoa, and that's your climax. The following action and resolution of this story happen very quickly. I would say that most of this stuff is in the story is rising action, and a lot of this is going to be dialogue. So tell me what they're talking about. What's happening is in the rising action. What that key event is that pushes us over this edge. And then the following action and resolution happen very, very quickly. Theme. I would say the theme of this story well, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but think about the events that occur and what the astrologer goes through and what the astrologer, the end of the story is key here. What is does the astrologer seem to have come through this having learned a life lesson, or does the astrologer view the events of the story as, what's the story called? An astrologer's day. So this is literally just like a day in the life of the astrologer, and does he learn anything at the end? All right, so now you've got your introduction, you got your plot map going. Let's go talk about the character map. Okay, so now we're talking about the astrologer as a character. We want to know adjectives that describe the astrologer. And no, he's never named in the book or the story, so we're just going to call him the astrologer. Now, just like from Civil Peace, pay attention to what the astrologer does from the beginning to the end. Include all of the major actions of the astrologer that show us what kind of person he is. This is a very dialogue-heavy story. We get a lot of narration and a lot of dialogue. So your words, your thoughts, and your words and thoughts of others are going to be key here. Find quotations that support the adjectives you use to describe the astrologer. If you think he's smart, what does he say? What does he think? What does the narrator say about him? What does someone else say that makes you think he's smart? And I think smart is an adjective that you could use. The narrator tells us some stuff in here that makes us think that the astrologer is very smart. So there's your character map. Now again, the theme of this unit is work, and why do we do the work that we do? Think about in this story, compare it to Civil Peace by Chinwe Achebe. Does Jonathan Nwegbu go to work for the same reasons that the astrologer does? Or are they two different people? I mean, yes, you've got to earn a living, but why do they do what they do? Are they different people in that sense? It's fun to think about. Okay, so that covers the two short stories. Make sure you have, for these short stories, make sure you have your plot maps, your character maps, and the comprehension check questions answered. These will be for class discussion. And then on Wednesday, when we come back together, we'll introduce the third story, Contents of the Dead Man's Pockets, and we'll try to pull it all together. Hope you guys are having a good one. Talk to you soon.